Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a ham and potato chowder, a lemon poppy seed sourdough discard muffin with a nice lemon glaze, and then we're going to make some melts to go with our soup, and then we're going to prep our butter crust for our pot pies for dinner tonight. So let's start with getting our chowder ready. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil in my Dutch oven here. My lid does not want to pop off. There we go. We're going to put about a tablespoon in here. Don't need much, just enough so that the onions don't stick to the bottom of the Dutch oven. I'm going to turn my heat to about a 7. And we're going to chop up our onion. So I'm going to cut off one side, then the other, and then we're going to make a nice slit all the way through. And we're just going to peel off this whole outer layer because that's not good for cooking. And then we're going to give a nice kind of a smaller dice on this because it's going to be in a chowder. So I'm going to do about 5 slices across. And then we'll just make some little squares for our dice. There we go. And then same here. I'm going to do about 5 slices across. And then we'll just make our little squares. Hence the word dicing. There we go. And we're going to pop this in our Dutch oven so it can start to caramelize. Beautiful. And we're going to let these caramelize for a few minutes. Let me give them a nice stir. And then we'll add in some ham, potatoes, garlic, and whatnot. But we're going to let them caramelize because we want to get the rich flavor out. So let's pop over here and we're going to start on our lemon poppy seed discard muffins. So I do have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. And we're going to start by doing the liquid ingredients first, and then we'll add in the dry. So you want to use a 1/2 cup of sourdough discard. I've got a lot of it yesterday. It was so full. I was like, we've got to do some discard recipes. So we're going to use 1/2 cup of sourdough discard. It doesn't have to be active, or it can be active. It doesn't matter. We're not using it for its rising agent, just to get rid of it so we can make some more bread. And then pour it in here. So 1/2 cup. Use this to get all of it out. And it's going to give you those naturally good probiotics that sourdough has. Perfect. Okay, let's bring this guy out of the way so he doesn't take up too much space. And then we are going to add 3/4 cup of milk. I'm using whole milk because I find whole milk just makes for a better product because it has a bit more fat in it. And we have little ones at home and that's what they drink. And then we're going to give this a nice stir, and then we're going to add in a 1/2 cup of melted butter. So we're going to mix up our discard until it's kind of all mixed up into the milk. There we go. And then I have a 1/2 cup, which is 1 stick of butter. And we're going to add it into here, and we're giving a nice stir. There we go. And that we're not going to be using oil. We're just going to be using butter in ours. The onions are smelling so delicious. I'm going to give them a nice little stir. Pop, pop, pop. There we go, because we don't want them to brown. Okay, now let's add in our eggs. We've got 2 eggs. So 1 and 2. Pop those over here. And I'm going to pop my yolks so that I then can mix them in well. There we go. Easy peasy. It's all combining up together nicely. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. So we're getting all of our liquids in right now because it's much easier to do the liquids and then add the dry to them. Okay, so we've got 1 teaspoon of vanilla. We'll give it a nice stir. And then we're going to add the zest from our lemons, which we need about 2 tablespoons of lemon zest. So it's about 1 to 2 lemons. So I'm just going to zest them and then we'll use the juice. You don't want to cut and juice your lemons first and then try to zest, because it is really hard to zest a lemon that has been already cut open because it's just not firm. You want a nice firm lemon to zest. And I find this is actually like a Parmesan cheese grater, but it zests my citrus so nice. It makes it to where they're not too big. And like this is going to be for our lemon poppy seed muffins, and you don't want to have a huge chunk of lemon zest in it. You want nice little pieces. And so I find the Parmesan cheese grater does great for that. And it will be, these lemon poppy seed muffins will be great with our ham and potato chowder and our melt. There we go. So we'll get a little bit of the other one.
You got a question? How was the oxtail?
Oh, it was delicious. Absolutely. Like even my parents were like, this is so good. There was no leftovers. A lot of times we might have like a little bit of a leftovers. Everything was gone. It was definitely delicious. And the children all thought it was really cool to eat ox, because I don't think I've served ox for them. Or at least I haven't done it in a really long time. But it was pretty good. It was so tender, and they were kind of like interested in the bone shape, because it's not like, it's kind of like a star-shaped bone that you have to pick the meat off of for it, but it was so good. Okay, we've got about 2 tablespoons of lemon zest. Stir this in while we're stirring over here. Let's give this one a little stir too. Perfect. Okay, now we are going to cut our lemons open and we will get the juice from them. So I didn't want to use my onion knife over there. I once served pineapple after I'd cut up an onion. Everybody could just say, oh, there's onions in it. So we're going to juice up just 1 lemon, because we need about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice, and 1 lemon is about enough for that. Here we go. And this little guy, it's a juicer. He's the best juicer I have found. He works better than the little ones or those pressed ones. I don't think those pressed ones work very well, and I've broken 2 of them. This guy, he's just like a little stick kind of thing that you jam in there, but he works great. There we go. So we've got our 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Give my hands a quick wash because they're very lemony. We're going to use this one.
Where did you get it?
I believe that one is from Target. I think it's part of like Joanna Gaines's like Hearth and Hand collection or something like that. Because it's wood. That makes me think that's where it's from. But I love it. I got it, and I used to always just hand squeeze mine because I had a zester jar and it just didn't work well. But this thing works great. Okay, let's start adding in our rising agents and then our sugar and our flour. So we're going to add in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then we're going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So make sure you get the powder right, because you don't want to do 2 teaspoons of baking soda, or your muffins will have a bitter taste and they'll be like huge. So 2 teaspoons of baking powder and just under a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So a little more than 1/4, but a little less than 1/2. There we go. And once I put that baking soda in there and start to stir it up, you guys are going to start to see it bubble. It's going to interact with both the lemon juice and the sourdough discard, like the lactic acid, like a baking soda and vinegar experiment. You can see it's already starting to get foamier. Little chemistry here. We're just going to mix until all of that baking soda and baking powder is mixed in. But this is what's going to give you a nice rise on your muffins. Okay, beautiful. Now we're going to add in 1 cup of sugar. This is where the sweetness is going to come from. Give it a nice stir. And then you want to add in 2 tablespoons of poppy seeds. And I find that one of these jars is just about a little over 2 tablespoons. So just pour in most of it, or you can get your tablespoon measurer and measure it. But I find, so 1, 2. And we're going to give this a nice stir for our lovely lemon poppy seed muffins. And then we're going to add in our flour in just a second. But look at our onions are starting to get nice and caramelized, which is perfect. Okay, beautiful. And now we're going to add in our flour. And we're going to use 2 cups of all-purpose flour. So don't want to use bread flour and you don't want to use self-rising flour. Just all-purpose. There we go. And you don't want to overmix. So we have them in here. We're going to mix until they're just combined, because if you overmix, you'll get a stiff muffin. And you want a nice, soft, and tender muffin. And I know so many people have like that urge to mix their batter until it's completely smooth. With muffins, or you don't want to do that because you're going to get a really stiff muffin. So just until it's just barely combined. So always, I know it's going to be lumpy, but that's what you want. Lumpy is going to give you the best. There we go. Perfect. And now I'm just going to get a couple more folds in here. Make sure there's no flour pockets anywhere. Perfect. So you see how we have a nice lumpy batter. That is what you want. Lumpy is king. Okay. Before we pop these in the oven, let's get our ham in here sizzling up so it can all cook up on here. I have about a 1/4 pound of ham, but we're going to be using a little bit less because I always cut off the kind of chewy edges of it. If you like those, you can keep them on, but I find they just get really chewy in your soups or in your sandwiches. I always cut off that skin just for a kind of a nicer texture. And we're just going to do a simple kind of cube here. So I'm go through. We're just going to chop it. Doesn't have to be beautiful. My tower was a little high, but you want some just nice bite-sized pieces. You could also buy cubed meat or ham at the store if you wanted to, but we had this sliced ham. And then if you didn't have ham, bacon, pancetta, pork jowl would all be great in this. Okay. Let's add in a spoonful of garlic, about 2 to 3 cloves if you're going to use fresh. And then let's give it a nice stir. You don't want to cook your garlic too long because it will crisp up pretty fast. So just enough to let out some of that flavor. And then let's put our ham in. And we're going to let this brown up. Beautiful. Oh, it's just the smell of garlic and onions just smell wonderful. Okay. And then I'm going to give my hands a quick wash. Then we're going to fill our muffin tins and pop our muffins in the oven. So we've got our muffin tin. We're going to put out 12 muffins liners because this recipe should make around 12. Let's see. Okay. Sometimes I'm bad about double lining, which doesn't really make much of a difference. And then I always like to use a metal spoon for scooping in my batter because it just slides off a little bit easier and is a little bit more accurate. I'm going to go through and give each one a big scoop first. Grab the muffin liner with it. Okay. That did not work out. We have an extra one. It completely grabbed my muffin liner. I'm going to wipe that out because you don't want to have that in there. Otherwise, it will burn. Okay. That's why you have extra liners. do. There we go. I just pulled it up. And we'll fill it up here, and then we'll come back and evenly fill them out, but you want them nice and full to the top. I love my muffins to be big and dome shaped. I don't want like one that ends right at the muffin tin, because you know the best part of the muffin is the top. So you want that nice big dome because that gives you most of that nice surface area. That's absolutely delicious. Always makes me think of the Seinfeld episode with Elaine and the muffin tops. But these are our delicious sourdough discard lemon poppy seed muffin. We'll make a yummy lemon zest glaze with them when they're done, and they'll be served with our potato and ham chowder, and we'll make some melts, and then we're gonna work on our butter crust for tonight. Okay, let's go over and give every one of these a nice second. Scoop in here. And again, since I use primarily butter in my baked goods, my batter is always much thicker than if you were to use an oil. And you can easily substitute out an oil if you want to for the equal parts. But I just think that the butter gives it a better flavor. It gives it a richer, nicer muffin. So, but you can easily switch it out for olive oil or coconut oil. You just use the same parts. I used a half a cup of melted butter here. That's what you would use, a half a cup of oil. We're just going to fill these all up to the top. I can smell that ham starting to brown over there for our potato soup. It just smells so good. Sometimes the simplest ingredients can make your house smell the best. Okay, these are all just about even. Let's go pop these in our oven at 400 degrees, and they're going to cook for about 15 minutes. So we're going to pop these in there. I'm going to just clean off a little bit because that just makes it harder to clean when it's later. And then I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes so I don't forget about them. Perfect. Okay, let's work on our soup, and then we'll prep our grilled cheeses, and then we'll make our pie crust for tonight. Because if you've ever made homemade pie crust, it needs to chill for a minimum of 1 hour, but I just like to make it a couple hours so it's nice and cold and ready to roll out so you have that nice flaky crust.
You got a question from Dempsey, wondering possible timeline on your chicken cordon bleu?
Oh, yes. I have to go to the store to get all the ingredients, but I will try to make it in the next week or two. I just talked to my husband about some of the recipes that people have been wanting us to make. So that is in our list. So I know we also have a roast with Yorkshire puddings on the list. So we will get to it. I'm just always trying to plan out. We had like chicken last week, so I try not to do like a fried chicken so close together, but I will. I think in the next week or two, we will definitely get that out there. There we go. We're just doing a nice chop up. This was about 3 stalks of celery, including the leaves. The leaves add a lovely flavor, so you want to make sure you put those in there as well. There we go. And then we're going to be using 3 yellow potatoes. I like to use yellow potatoes because they hold their texture and their shape better in soups and stews than a russet. Russet tends to disintegrate. And since we want this to be a chowder and not necessarily like a potato-y pasty soup, we're just going to put nice little cubes in here. And these will hold together well. And I'm doing them in nice cubes so they'll get tender faster. If you wanted a bigger cut, you'd have to cook your soup a little bit longer. But we want to try to get everything done at the same time. So nice little cubes. We'll throw these in there. And so I'm going to cut my potato probably into fourths, and then we'll flip and cube it again. And also because these are yellow potatoes, I don't have to peel the skin. Russet potatoes do not have a great skin for when you're boiling them in a soup or stew. but a yellow potato or, you know, like a Yukon Gold or a red potato, their skins are much more tender and they're great to leave them on if you don't mind them. They don't like get stringy or anything in there. Okay. There we go. Let's see. I'm going to give, these are kind of big potatoes, so let me see how. I'm going to give it a stir and see how it looks in here with all of my other vegetables. You know what? I think 2 might be good. Okay, so we'll save this potato for later. And then we're going to add in a bay leaf. There's a little piece of celery flying in the air there. And since this is going to be kind of a short stew instead of a long stew, I crunch up and crush my bay leaves into small little pieces. And that way the flavor gets spread out, and bay leaf typically doesn't get tender or soft. It stays kind of crunchy, but when you crush it up so small, you don't even notice it. And then we're going to add in a teaspoon of thyme. And this is going to give just a lovely flavor to our ham and potato chowder. And we're going to stir this up real quick. Perfect. Oh, always an escaper. And we're going to let that thyme kind of heat up. We're also going to add in a little bit of ground black pepper, about a half a teaspoon. Just going to shake it over the top. But what I would say about a half a teaspoon. And we're going to give it a nice stir again. Kind of let those oils in the bottom kind of hit the seasonings and help bring them out before we add in our broth. Beautiful. Okay. Now we are going to add in around 4 cups of chicken broth. I'm going to be using chicken bouillon with water. So we're going to pour in the water. Perfect. So you want it to kind of just go over the top of your potatoes and your ham, but not like so over where you have an inch or 2 above it, but just barely over the top. And then we're going to add in a big heaping spoonful of chicken bouillon. And this is going to give you the saltiness to your soup as well. I'm not going to add any extra salt in it. It's just going to come from the chicken bouillon, which I like over chicken broth because I find chicken broth doesn't have a lot of flavor unless you make it yourself. Okay, nice little stir. And then we're going to let this simmer and cook up while we prep everything else. Okay, let's get our grilled cheeses going, and then we'll make the glaze and we'll make the crust for tonight. We're going to have some pot pie, some kind of stewed beef pot pies for dinner tonight. And we're going to be making our 2 sourdoughs. We're going to make our basic, and then we're going to make our Guinness sourdough that we prepped yesterday. So we're using up the last of our, this was our herby sourdough we made with an herb inclusion. And we just have enough to make about 2 sandwiches out of this one. So I'm always making bread when I know we won't have enough for a sandwich. There we go. So we'll have 1 big one, and then we'll have a half and a half. Perfect. Okay, so first we want to put our butter on each side of the bread. So I'm going to put the nicest sides down, the most even one, so that they'll get a nice crisp off all the way. Put 1 there. Which one is better? I think this side is. You don't want to have a really ridgy side as the one down on your skillet. Otherwise, only like the tips of it crisp up and not the whole bread. So I'm always looking, which one has the nicest side? These 2 are nice. Okay. Perfect. And just one side, it's a side that's going to be facing the skillet. And I realized we'll have to do. Okay. Our cheese, we're going to do Gouda and salami. And then I'm going to make mine a little bougie, and I'm going to add a little bit of pesto to mine because I love pesto and salami. I feel like they work really well together. And Gouda is just a great cheese. Okay, let's get a little bit of pesto on this guy. I think I have a knife. Give it a little stir. Oh, I'm also very picky about my pesto. In the summer, I'll make it my own. But if I buy store-bought pesto, I like this Kirkland's, good old Costco. And then who else? It's Rana's, R-A-N-A, Rana. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but their pesto is really good. Those are like the only two that I like because they don't have like a weird aftertaste. Okay, let's put our salami on. Remember, just a nice thin layer. You don't want a super thick layer or you're not going to be able to heat up your cheese and have it melt. If we can open it, sometimes they make these packages like completely adult proof. There we go. We'll just put it in a Ziploc baggie. It's not even opening here. See? It's like when you go to the store and like you buy a toy for your kid and it's like you have to get like a machete out to get it opened up because they have like put so many zip ties and so many weird places. Sometimes I feel like you get food packaged weird like that and you're like, how am I supposed to open this? So nice layer, nice and thin, not too big. Oh, can't forget to put our piece of cheese down on this one. I always kind of sandwich my meats between cheeses because I want cheese touching the inside of both slices of bread. And then I don't let my cheese go over the top, like or the sides of it, because it will just burn on your skillet. Let's get a nice piece of salami out for this one. Okay, salami. And then we'll do our second layer of Gouda because it's good. And then we will be ready to cook up our grilled cheeses. It's like a little mosaic here. Got to get it all to fit nicely. Perfect. And this one's much bigger, but there we go. And perfect. And I'm going to turn my skillet on to about a 6, and we're going to let it kind of warm up. And I'll be listening for the sizzle. I'm going to give my chowder over here a nice little stir. Don't want anything to stick on the bottom. And while we're waiting, let's prep our butter crust for tonight. So if you've never made like pot pies or homemade pies, there was to say, or if you've made them with like shortening, gotta go butter. I used to do my pie crust with shortening, and then I had butter crust, and I was like a game changer. So much better. So we're gonna start with 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Again, you don't want to have bread flour or self-rising. Bread flour will make it a chewy crust because of the gluten, and self-rising will give you like a puff in your crust. It will be hilarious. Okay, so we've got 4, and now we need a half. There we go. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt. There it is. To our mix. You got to make sure you salt it because this is the only time that you'll be able to salt the crust. And in a pot pie, you want a savory crust. You don't want your crust to taste like nothing. So you just got to make sure you have your salt in there. And then we're just going to give it, I'm using my pastry cutter here to stir it up so I don't have to get out another utensil. I always like to minimize my dishes as much as possible. There we go. Okay, so now you're going to take 4 sticks of cold butter, and this is going to make 2 huge chicken pot pies that have a crust on the bottom and on the top. So this would be also if you were going to make 4 9-inch pies, and there's always like a little bit of leftover, but this is not just for one. So this is for enough to feed like, I'm making enough pot pies to feed like 10 people tonight, so they're going to be nice and big. And I like to, before I use my pastry cutter, I just kind of cut my butter up into smaller chunks, so it's a little bit easier to cut my butter into it. But you could also use a food processor if you wanted to, and just use that to blend the butter into the crust if you want. but it doesn't take long to make the pie crust. So I just always do by hand, do a little elbow grease. And then I don't have to wash my food processor. It's like the worst. It has like a blade and everything, like the attachments, like 10 different parts for like a 5-second thing. But this is we're making the butter crust for tonight's dinner for our beefy pot pies. But for today, for our lunch, we're having the ham and potato chowder. And then we popped our lemon poppy seed muffins in the oven. And then we're making up our melt. And then we'll make a quick little lemon glaze to go on top of our poppy seed muffins when we're done making this pie crust. I will say, chicken pot pies seem, or like when you make homemade pies in general, they seem like a daunting thing, but they're actually quite easy. It's really not difficult once you get the hang of it. And it's a nice thing that you can make, and then you just sit around and you wait for it to cook, and then you're done. And I've made these pot pies that we're having tonight. I've made them like in advance and then popped them out of the oven or out of the fridge and popped them in the oven. So it was like a really cool thing to do. So I could prep my meals like a day or two in advance. Okay, I'm using my pastry cutter and I'm just cutting this butter into my flour. And we just want to cut it in there until we have no pieces bigger than a pea. And it really doesn't take much time to do it. There we go. And just cutting through, and a nice like cut and twist. It's like a good workout too. Got to earn your pot pie for tonight. Okay, and then I'm going to take my knife here and go through the blades real quick because the butter likes to get stuck. And after I do that, I'm going to give my grilled cheeses their first flip because I can start to hear their sizzle. And that's always my clue that they're ready for their first flip. Okay. So the first going through is we are just warming up the butter, warming up the bread and the cheese. We're not getting the brown crisp. That's for our second turn through everything because sourdough is thicker bread, but your grilled cheese needs time to heat up for the cheese to get melted. Otherwise, if you try to crisp it up, it'll be burnt bread before our before the grilled cheese is melted. So I'm going to turn it down and I hear our muffins. So let's go and check on our muffins and see how they're doing. See if they're ready to come out. Sometimes muffins can be finicky and they might need a minute or two more, but let's go and look on it. Let me check the timer before it. Oh, these are perfect. Let me give them a nice tap. Oh, perfect. They're nice and firm. That's when you know that they're ready. You don't want to pull them out if they're jiggly, but they are perfect. Look at these gorgeous lemon poppy seed muffins. We used our sourdough discard to make them, which will help keep them extra moist. And we're going to top these off with a little bit of lemon glaze. Let me get a trivet over here to put them on, but they are gorgeous. Okay. Now let's get our bread here chopped up. I'm going to give a nice little stir over here on our chowder. We've got a nice kind of rolling boil on it. Perfect, because we're tenderizing up the potatoes. And we'll be adding a little bit of cream to that in a little bit. But whenever I'm making any soup that has a cream base, I add it at the very end so it doesn't curdle. Because a lot of times if cream gets too hot, it will curdle up. Okay, we're almost done here. And this is going to be for our delicious butter crust. And it also, this is, I'm using it for a savory pie tonight, but it also is delicious. A lot of times if I have a little bit left over, I'll make a little apple pie or an apple tart. Okay. A little elbow grease, and then we're going to add in some water, and then we're going to push it in a form, and then it will go into the freezer or the fridge until dinner tonight. But this will be for our butter pie crust for our beefy pot pies tonight. But for lunch, we're going to be having our salami melts with our potato and ham chowder and our delicious sourdough discard lemon poppy seed muffins. Okay, this is mixed up. Let me flip our grilled cheeses. Perfect. See if they've got a nice, ready to start the browning process now on both sides. And then for our pie crust, we are going to add between 16 and 20 tablespoons, but I do the math in an easy way. 10 tablespoons is equal to 150 milliliters. So I've got my milliliters here and we'll pour it in. And then I'll need to add a bit more after it, but you add it until it's all sticking together. You don't want your dough to be a paste. You want it to be shaggy that you then press together. So we're starting here with just under 250 milliliters. And we're just using a fork. Fork is the best. You don't want to use a spoon for this because you want flaky layers in your pie crust. So we're just using, and then I'm not pouring it in all at one time. I'm taking my time pouring it in because I want a nice flaky pie crust. I don't want paste. Now I'm going to get 50 more. There we go. We'll add this in, and you can see we've got a nice shaggy dough forming, and this is going to be for our pie crust. And there we go. Almost done. I'm trying to mix it all around, and we're going to turn it out on our counter in just a second. I'm going to turn down my burner here. And now you can see how we still have a shag on the bottom part, but that is perfectly fine. That's what we want because this is where you're going to get your flaky layers in your pie crust. We're going to do like with a scone or a biscuit. You're going to kind of fold and press in. This creates that just super tender pie crust so that when you roll it out later, you have these built-in layers in it already. And this is how you want to combine it. You don't want to knead it like Play-Doh. You just want to fold and press. And as this dough sits in the fridge, the water that you add will rehydrate the flour a little bit. So it won't, when we take it out, it won't be crumbly like this. There we go. Kind of push and fold. Push and fold. So just like with a scone or a biscuit, you could actually do you do it a bit more than you do with a scone or a biscuit because this is going to be a bit thinner, but don't like knead it, just push and fold. And now I'm going to divide it into 4 balls because we're going to have our top, our bottom, and our middle, or our top, our bottom for 2 pies. So, and then we'll put it in a Ziploc baggie and we'll refrigerate it for the next couple hours till dinner. All right, let's flip these. I think we're ready for our last. Perfect. These are almost done. I'm gonna give my hands a quick wash. Beautiful. Okay, let's get our dough on this plate here. And then what I do is I just cover it with saran wrap or like any type of cling wrap you have. And then you keep it in the fridge and it will firm up. And then about 30 minutes before you want to use it, take it out so that it is a little bit softer to work with. Okay, let's move some of this stuff over here to make our glaze and finish up our soup, and then we're done. Okay, so let's check on our potatoes in here and see if they're nice and tender yet. I'm grab a fork real quick. I always check my potatoes just by pulling one up, and then we will push a fork through it. And if it's nice and tender like that, see how that is? It's nice and tender. It means these potatoes are perfect for our finishing up our stew. Okay, so I've got it turned down.
You have a question. Why do you have green buckets?
Oh, so yes, it is St. Patrick's Day here, and every year I give my kids and my niece and nephew a green leprechaun cauldron full of like rainbow St. Patrick's Day theme. This is for my niece and nephew that are over here playing, but this is for them to take home. But my kids, I have them over there. They got them. They get like green. My two little ones got some green native shoes, and my older ones got green sweatshirts that they wanted. So we always give them just like green themed things. I go a little all out for holidays. I'm a little crazy, but that's again like the teacher in me, the kid in me. And I don't want those white parts either, but my kids love it. They look forward to it. I'm crazy. I have like a bucket of, decorations. I decorate for every like minor holiday. As you can see, I've got my St. Patrick's Day. All of my kids have a St. Patrick's blanket too. And we're not Irish, but we love to celebrate all the holidays here. We're big into holidays. Okay, so I have chopped up some fresh parsley and some green onions. And we're going to add these to our soup in just a second, but we're going to add a bit of cream first. I'm going to turn this all the way down to low because I don't want to have it on super high and do this. And we are going to add in about 1/3 cup of cream, and we're going to see what it looks like and see if I want to add any more. When I make my chowders, I like them to be more of a broth base, but if you like a thicker chowder, just take your cream and mix it with 2 tablespoons of flour, and that will give you a much richer, thicker like chowder. But I like a nice thin chowder, my personal preference. I'm going to give it a pinch more. There we go. I will say a little bit of cream goes a long way. And a lot of people think when they've had like a cream-based soup that it must have like oodles of cream in it, but it doesn't. Like this was probably like 1/3 cup of cream max. Okay, we're adding in our fresh parsley, and we're adding in our fresh green onions. Give it a stir. It's just going to be a lovely ham and potato chowder, and the green onions and the parsley with the thyme in there is just going to make for a absolutely lovely soup, especially because today it was freezing cold. Now let's whip up our lemon glaze for our lemon poppy seeds, and we'll be done. This will take less than a minute. Glazes are super easy, but they are a great way to add a little extra pop of flavor. So we're going to cut our lime, or not our lime, our lemon here. I'm going to add 1 cup of powdered sugar to this. And then here's my lemon juicer. We're just going to use fresh lemon juice. So it's just powdered sugar and fresh lemon juice. You could add a little bit of lemon zest to it if you wanted to give a little bit more texture, but this is all you need to do. And then we're just going to mix it. And powdered sugar dissolves so quickly. So you can see at the bottom that those 2 tablespoons of lemon juice have already dissolved almost all of that powdered sugar. And then this is what we're going to do with it. You just come over here, and once it's got a nice mix, all you got to do is we're going to drizzle it over our lemon poppy seed muffins. Perfect. You see how simple and pretty and elegant? And if you really wanted to make these like super bougie, you just take a little lemon zest and zest it on top, and that would just like make it look even more bakery-esque.
Could you use flour sprinkles? You
could definitely use flour sprinkles. Apparently they're all the rage right now. I've never heard of them up until a couple weeks ago, but flour sprinkles are the rage right now. Okay, let's serve up lunch. So the beauty of having this, I've had these on nice and low, so we should have a lovely, beautiful brown crust on these. So we've got our, I'm going to bring them over to you in just a second, but we have our salami and Gouda melts, which are absolutely fabulous. We're using up the rest of our herby sourdough bread we made. And now our ham and potato soup. Grab a little bit. Perfect. And this is what we're having lunch today. And don't forget, we will be having a beautiful lemon poppy seed muffin for dessert. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We actually did a lot today. We made our soup, we made our sandwiches, we made our muffins, we made our pie crust for tonight. Well, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to message us or comment if you have any recipes or cooking questions. We'd love to help you out with that. And also don't forget to join us tonight. We're going to be making some beefy pot pies. Not sure what time frame is, but later in the evening. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.